All right, so over the weekend I packed up a moving truck and I drove from Minnesota to Georgia, moving my kids and my ex-wife's stuff to Georgia. And it was about a day's worth of drive. So I woke up at 6 a.m. and I drove all the way till 6 a.m. the next day. And there's some naps in there and some stopping for lunch and stuff like that. But basically drove the whole way through, and I didn't really get tired till the last 2 hours. So as I'm driving, I'm listening to this audiobook. It's like a 16-hour audiobook. And it's a book called The Truth by a guy named Strauss, who wrote a book called The Game, which documented the sort of development of the pickup artist scene in the United States over the last couple decades. And that book spawned a show on VH1 that you may have seen with a guy named Mystery in it. But anyway, this is the author of the book that I was listening to. The book's called The Truth, and it's a journey of this guy's struggle with intimacy. Okay, so what happened was he met this girl that knocked his socks off, and he ended up cheating on her, and then he went to sex addiction rehab therapy as a demonstration of his willingness to do right by her, and then also to actually fix himself so that he's worthy of being in a relationship. And so he goes to this treatment, and basically he's a really fucking smart guy. He's just like me, actually, where I'm like complimenting myself like subvertly in the video. No, but like he's just like me in the sense that he pokes holes in the system and looks for inconsistencies. And he was doing this to this treatment process, and he was seeing through it, and he couldn't accept it because the people that were delivering the treatment were basically like way stupider than him, right? And there was some logical inconsistencies there that he just couldn't accept the treatment, which might have done something for him, but ultimately he couldn't accept it because he was questioning it with good questions. And so, and there's mosquitoes out here all over the place, so I'm going to be swatting through this video. But anyway, so he goes through this treatment, and he realizes it's not going to work for him. So he goes back to his girlfriend. He breaks up with her because he couldn't be what he wanted to be for her. And he loved her. He loved the shit out of her, okay? So he breaks up with her, and what he does in response to this is he decides to try out every conceivable structure of relationship that you can possibly imagine, like him and 3 other girls all living together. He tries tacking himself on to like an existing bisexual female relationship as the third wheel. He tries like living in a commune thing. He tries having an open relationship with a girl who turns out to be just like him and ends up cheating on him. And there's all this stuff that goes down, and in the end he realizes that one of the things he discovered in the treatment that actually worked for him, the treatment, it was called chair work, and they go back into his childhood to discover what some of the disconnects were. And what they figured out was that his dad had a fetish for cripples, and his mother had a bad leg. And so his mother figured this out before he was old enough to find this out himself. And his mother figured it out, and she resented the shit out of the dad because basically what it was that he felt so weak in the world as a man that the only kind of female he thought he could dominate was one that was physically incapacitated. And so that's where his fetish came from, and that's why he got with the mom. And so she realizes this, and she hates the guy, right? So what she does is what they termed enmeshment or emotional incest, and she creates an emotional relationship with Neil, the author of this book. And so now he feels smothered by any kind of emotional intimacy because he's scared that what'll happen with his girlfriend is what did happen with his mom back in the day. Now it's starting to rain. I hope we can get through this video. So he's running away, and so he cheats as this subconscious way of escaping this intimacy that he remembers from his childhood. And so I think we're going to travel underneath this. There's a roof over here if we have to. So anyway, so he's escaping the emotional intimacy. Now, so he discovers this in the treatment process, okay? And so he goes through all these crazy relationship structures. He figures out what the root of the problem is, and ultimately gets back with his girlfriend who he cheated on, that he was trying to sort of escape emotional intimacy with, okay? So here we go. All right, we're set up now. So he figures it out, and long story short, at the end of the story, he gets back with his ex-girlfriend, and now it's really raining out there now. I'm glad I moved. He gets back with her, and that's the end of the book. Okay, this is a 16-hour audiobook. I was listening to this whole thing all the way through this drive. Okay, and what are the takeaways? So there's takeaways for guys, because let's just start with this. every guy has this struggle of trying to be faithful and having his eye be caught by other women. That's every guy. If your guy says no, he's fucking lying to you. I don't care who he is. We are biologically programmed to have that radar of the hot chick. You know, it's just there. You know, and so when you're with your girl, what do? The right thing to do is to show her that your focus is on her and that she's the only girl within a 10-mile radius that matters to you, right? So even though in your peripheral vision you could notice that girl in the short shorts or whatever, like, you combat that, you use your discipline and you focus, right? And that's the way you want to treat that person that you're with. But the problem still exists, right? The problem still exists that we notice it whether we want to or not. And then what if she's not there, right? So you want to train yourself to be faithful. If you're going to be in a relationship, you might as well live up to it, right? And I believe that in a monogamous relationship, or in just a relationship where you have a deep trust and intimacy, that's where the greatest rewards come from, because you get that deep bond, and like you can't replace that. I think that scenario is like the best one that you could strive for. But the problem still exists, is the fact that we are biologically programmed to be sexually attracted to multiple women. Always. That's just the truth of it. And so not every guy is going to have to go through this crazy sexual journey like this guy did. Most guys can't. This is another thing. It's like, so you might be in a relationship and you might have your trustworthy guy next to you who's always been faithful to you. But the bottom line is, he probably might have not even had the skills to do anything different. You know? So Neil was a pickup artist. So he has the charisma and the experience to be able to set up these crazy situations. Like so there might be a lot of guys watching this that would morally like downcast this video and say, I would never do anything like that. That's disrespectful. But the bottom line is, those guys that say that, they can't even do it. They couldn't even do it if they wanted to. Like, most guys haven't had a threesome, right? Most guys don't have the skills to even set this stuff up. But I'm not saying you even should. I'm not even saying you should. This guy could. He had the resources and the experience to do it, and he went through this crazy journey, and that was his thing. And most people don't have the childhood trauma that Neil Strauss had, right? So it's different. But what I am saying, what I think is useful, is that as a single guy, you should learn the skills, the same skills that Neil would have, to be able to go after exactly the person that you want, right? So if you're in the dating world, you ought to make a beeline. Well, really, you need to talk to multiple women at once, talk to all different kinds of women to get the experience. But in terms of somebody you're actually pursuing, you should pursue the highest quality woman that you could possibly pursue. So that means looks, it means personality, it means like status in the world or whatever. Okay, so you should be going for exactly what you want. Most guys don't do that. Most guys find the nearest relatively attractive girl who's also into them, and that they seem to get along, and then they settle into this mediocre relationship, and either they get divorced or they settle for this like mediocre relationship for the rest of their lives, and they never really have like a happy, situation. That's most people. That's just the truth. Okay? Because that's what's easy. Most people do what's easy. So what's hard? What's hard is, as a single guy, you learn how to approach women, how to entertain them, be charismatic, have a good conversation, how to not be sexually creepy, how to just demonstrate your personality, and then let the woman decide whether or not they like you, and then accept it if they don't. So you don't have your ego going, and then you can sort of weather yourself to the rejection, and just accept what the reality is. And then eventually you'll meet a high quality girl that likes you too. So that's the first step. The second step is, once you get that relationship, you're putting in the work. It's work to have this fresh relationship where the sexual attraction doesn't go away. So that's the other thing. So not every guy's going to need to go through this crazy journey where he has to like work it out of the system of all these options that may exist or whatever, if you could even create those to begin with. I think that you go after the girl that you want. You build yourself into the kind of person, as the first step, build yourself into the kind of person that can get that girl to begin with. Then you go after her, and then you're in a relationship. You're putting in the work to keep it fresh. So what is that work? Number one is having sexual polarity, which means that, throughout your day, sometimes you're going to have to act in the feminine. Like in this video, I have to be expressive and all this kind of stuff, right? So that's a feminine trait. But then the other part of your day you might be in your masculine, but when it's time to go to the bedroom, you're in your masculine. And so the girl, she might be in the boardroom at 1 minute, then she comes home, nurtures the kids or whatever as a feminine quality, but then when she goes to the bedroom, she's feminine. And now you have this polarity set up to where there's sexual attraction. That's one thing that requires work, because you have to manually polarize the situation, because throughout the day you're bouncing back and forth as an adult, So that's one thing. The other thing is using distance to create attraction. So if you're constantly side by side, if you're like best friends with your wife or whatever, and you're constantly side by side, and you're not, say, going out on business trips, and you don't have your own friend group, and you don't have your own hobbies, that is going to create, that's going to be the opposite of attraction, because once two magnets are here, there's no space to come back together. And so what you have to do is use distance through your hobbies, through your purpose. Really, the best thing to do is get on your life purpose, and use that as a means of creating authentic distance between you two, not just being cold and indifferent and pushing her away, but using authentic distance to create opportunities to come back together. And those are two huge ways that you can keep the relationship alive, with attraction and sexual interest. Okay, so the other thing is, once you have those two things in place, then planning great dates, being the leader, coming up with adventures for you two, right? Keep the relationship fresh, So even if you have this attraction, now we're getting the splashback of the rain, so I got to go deeper in here. But plan cool shit to do, right? So you're the leader of the relationship, so you ought to be coming up with activities to do. So by this point, if you're in a relationship, you have an idea for the kind of thing she likes. Find something that has some kind of element of what she likes, and just plan it, and then make it happen, right? So you should be planning the dates really from the beginning, but also as you're in a relationship, plan adventures to do together, and don't ask her what she wants to do. Don't put the ball in her court. Say, this is what we're going to do at whatever time, and then maybe have a backup option, because if she resists it, you can say, okay, well, I also planned out this other thing, so if you don't like the first thing, let's at least do the other thing. But lead that shit, right? And now you have this means of newness and excitement within the relationship, and their attraction's there because the distance is there, because you're on your purpose, and you have the sexual polarity, and you don't need to go after other women, because you have this structure in place that is new and exciting, and you're the kind of guy that she wants to be with no matter what, and she's the kind of girl that you want to be with because you chose her from the beginning. People change, but the bottom line is your eyes aren't always wandering. You have the hottest girl in the room because that's what you sought out from the beginning. You know what I mean? And that you jive together. So ideally, you've selected this person. So let's take a look at my dating life over the last year. I've been out, probably just about every other weekend, some weekends with multiple girls in the same weekend, okay? Now, over the course of the last year of doing this, there have been plenty of people that I could have settled into relationships with if I wanted to. But I never quite actually found what I was looking for all the way. And so you should be selected to this point. You shouldn't be so picky to where, you're never going to end up with anybody because nobody meets your standards. That's bullshit. If you're looking for a deep emotional connection, you got to choose somebody at some point. But don't choose somebody that that a year down the line you're not going to be happy with. Because some people will be good enough for the moment where they're relatively attractive, they seem kind of cool or whatever, but that's going to get old. Pick somebody that isn't going to get old. And one of the ways that that's going to happen is that you're going to put in the work to make that not happen. The other thing is you want her to be worth the work, right? So somebody you're totally physically into, and somebody that you really get along with, you understand, and you guys just vibe together, And so that's what I think the work is. That's what I think is worth the work. That's the way I think the ideal situation should look like. And again, most people are doing what's easy. Most people are settling into relationships and either sticking in it because of the kids, or they get divorced and then they start all over again and they repeat the same problem. But what I'm saying is the antidote to this is the work. And as the guy, if we take the responsibility and say, look, My job is to be on my purpose. My job is to be the kind of guy that she would want to be with. And my job is to lead this fucking relationship and plan shit out. And yeah, that's basically it, to do all that. Then, you know what I mean? Like, if you went after the girl you wanted to begin with, what can go wrong? If you're taking responsibility to fucking lead the shit, you know what the roadmap looks like, you know what you're supposed to do, you went after the girl that you want, the only thing that's left for this thing to go wrong is, like, you know, like something on her end. Maybe she cheats, or like maybe you know, you guys just went off in two total different directions because she was too young or something like that. But really, long story short, like, nothing should really go wrong. You know, if she's in her feminine because you're in your masculine, you're already physically attracted to her, you scouted out somebody that was a worthwhile person, like, this isn't the kind of person that should cheat on you anyway. Like, anything could happen, but you've done the work to scout it out, you've done the work to maintain it, and you've done the work on yourself to be worthy of this person. That's the ideal situation, right? So it's just like achieving success in any little discipline, right? The guys that maybe get the biggest, or the guys that eat the most and are putting in the hard work in the gym every day. You know, it's just, it's like business, right? If you work on your business every day, chances are you're going to make some money. This is work. And that's the same thing with relationships. So I think that's what I wanted to say. I think this book was really interesting because, guys, you know, we wonder about the world. We're here in this world to get what we want out of the world. And I think to every guy who's very sexually driven, a book like this, of this guy who goes off on all these fucking escapades, it's interesting, you know. But it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. But I think that we're called to get what we want out of the world, which, when you're single, you know, you probably ought to be getting experience, the kind of experience that you're not going to be wanting for in a relationship, and that when it's time to get in a relationship, you put in the hard work and then you make it what it should be. I think that's all I have to say, but if you want to, check out the book The Truth by Neil Strauss, and just be willing to put in the work and go out and get what you want.